Hi, this is Coach Daniel of the Sleep Coach School. And if you are looking to come off a medication, then this video is for you. I've put together 9 steps that takes you from just that first consideration, should I do it or not, to the final step, which is sleeping well forever. Before we get started here, one of the steps here is, of course, talk to your doctor if you're on a prescription medication. So everyone is on board. That's super, of course, important, of course. But that said, let us jump right in. And by the way, this episode was triggered by a comment today from Lauren. So I want to thank you, Lauren, for asking about medications today. It's one of those, like, I can't believe I haven't talked about this before. I've talked on similar topics, but not really this one. So I think it can be a really helpful one. Okay, so that said, let's start off with step number 1. You are taking a medication, an over-the-counter or prescription medication, and you're thinking of weaning off of this, coming off of it. Well, the first step, I think, is actually ask yourself that question: should I come off? Is there conflict? And here's why I think this is so important. I see a lot of people who take a medication and have absolutely no conflict about that. They are perfectly fine. Oftentimes I see people who tell me, I sleep great. I've taken trazodone for 15 years, and just mention that in passing. And then I don't really see any need to talk to this patient about insomnia or sleep physiology or anything like that, because there is no conflict. And so, where do conflicts come from? Well, a conflict happens when, you have 2 conflicting interests. And one of them is, I want to sleep medication free. And the other one is, but I want to sleep well, right? And oftentimes these 2 can be in conflict. And that's when somebody's taking a medication and they're sleeping better, but they don't want to take the medication. Well, then guess what? There is this friction, this tension, these 2 interests that are like rubbing against each other. And that never makes for good sleep. So the problem really, in my opinion, is around conflict. Because when there is a conflict like that, a good sleep will not happen. And there are 2 ways to end a conflict, which we'll get to in a second. But before we do that, I want to talk about, like, a big reason there is conflict, which is a lot of people have just it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to you to take medication, to do something that is natural, that you should be able to do on your own. Completely understand. That's a big one. But another one is you're thinking, this is harmful to my body, to my health. It cannot be good to take a medication, from health or wellness perspective. And I often want to point out, actually, that there is not evidence that sleep medications, in general, are very, very detrimental to your health. Sure, there are studies that say that sedating medications increase, like, fall risks in the elderly, but that's not like every single study showing that. The one study that I love to quote is the Lack and Lovato study from early 2019. It's a meta-analysis that included like 36 million people, showing that those with insomnia and those who don't have insomnia have the exact same life expectancy. In that same study, they did not show that there was an increased risk for premature death with sleep medications. There was kind of like a trend towards that, but it was not statistically significant. So again, I want to point out that that wasn't shown. It was not shown that sleep medications cause an increased mortality in this huge study. And now it may come as a surprise here that, I want to point out that medications are maybe not as harmful as you would think, but the reason is this: the more you think it is absolutely imperative that I get off this medication, it is really, really bad for my health, that makes you more pressured to come off, which is another way of saying you're more pressured to sleep so you can come off. And then it becomes more conflict, more tension, more pressure, which is never good. So actually, I always like to de-emphasize this, like the health, what we always hear about, it's not good for your health to take medications, because when that's de-emphasized, when you think, oh, maybe this is not so bad for my health at all, well, then there's less conflict, and with less conflict, everything gets better. I hope that was that made sense. If not, as always, comment or send us an email. But that said, we will talk about how can you end this conflict now. Well, there's two ways. Number one is become okay with the med. That is an option, because if you're like, okay, maybe it's not harmful to me, and guess what? A lot of people take medications, and that's fine. I'm okay with taking it indefinitely, and you're sleeping well. Well, there's no conflict. Maybe you don't need to come off. And the other way to end the conflict is, of course, not taking it. Then there's also no conflict. But so the first step is like asking yourself, should I come off? And maybe you shouldn't. Maybe there's circumstances when you shouldn't. But let's say that you have, your thinking is, no, I definitely want to come off for whatever reason. Then I say the second step here, step number 2, is learn about sleep physiology, specifically the gas and brake model. If you check out the playlist called This is NATO, there will be an episode on the gas and brake model there, which I think is very, very good. And very, very super briefly here, the gas in our sleep system is sleepiness. It's the only thing that can make us sleep. And the brake in our sleep system is hyperarousal, which comes from typically worry, stress, anxiety, excitement, things like that. That is the gas and brake model. And what you learn from that is that no medication can make you sleep. It is physiologically impossible, which is super, super important. And also, I just snuck this one in here. Remember, you are biased to believe in control. It may seem very hard to believe that nothing except your own body can make you sleep when you've taken something and you slept better. But remember this: when you have trouble sleeping, that comes from a lack of a sense of control. Like, I can't do this. I got to do this, and the fight for control is what makes you have more and more trouble sleeping. And so where this is going is that your kind of the safety center in your brain, which is the reason you have trouble sleeping, wants to believe that there is some control to be had. Is always looking for ways to control things just a little bit. So it is always biased to believe that something works. This seemed to work. This seemed to work. That's why it is so often to hear people say it doesn't work always, but sometimes it works. It is that necessity of finding something that gives you at least some sense of control. And that's why you're always biased to think some things work, when often if you really do the detective work, you can find that maybe it's not that it works sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. Maybe that is variations in my anxiety level, and the medication actually doesn't have much to do with how I sleep. Just a little pointer there. But sleep physiology is super, super important to know about. That will definitely help you. Number 3, talk to your doctor if this is a prescription drug, for sure. And maybe even if it isn't. Like, if you have any questions about your health, always talk to your doctor. And this was supposed to be number 4 here, but we'll just keep going. We'll say that this is, we'll call this part of the plan, actually. Talk to your doctor, and it's part of the plan. So let's keep this number 3 here. So when you're starting to create a plan, and a good question is this one: are you taking the medication regularly or not? And actually another question, which is, are you sleeping well or not? Because that influences how you're going to create your plan. So let's go over these 4 scenarios. So let's say you are taking something regularly. Every night you take this medication, same dosage, and you're sleeping well. Okay. Well, what can you do then? Well, you can internalize confidence. You can internalize confidence. It's a great opportunity for that. What do I mean with this? Well, you have already learned, because you studied sleep physiology, that medications cannot make you sleep. They can take away some anxiety, but they can't make you sleep. And therefore, you can internalize confidence. You can say, every single minute, hour I've slept, even when I took this medication, that was my own body doing that. It had nothing to do with the medication. And then when the confidence goes from the outside to the inside, you are in a great place to start coming off this medication. Now, if you're taking something on a regular basis, then weaning off it rather than cold turkey is probably the best option, okay? And which we'll see, it's maybe a little different if you're not taking it regularly. But let's go to 3B here. You're taking something regularly and you are not sleeping well. You're taking something every night. Sometimes you sleep better, sometimes you sleep not much at all. Now, guess what? Here you have an opportunity to build sleep confidence, actually. It may not seem like it, but you do, because again, sleep physiology. So you know that, when you take the medication and you sleep, that is not because of the medication. And when you take the medication and you don't sleep, well, there you have it. There you see that if something could make you sleep, it would make you sleep all the time. So when you have kind of like, when you take something regularly and you're not sleeping well, you also have something to build confidence with, meaning you can say, oh, since the medication doesn't always make me sleep, maybe it never does, so you have material there as well to build sleep confidence. And again, if you take something regularly, weaning is probably best. But if you take something regularly and you are almost never sleeping well, maybe you are in territory where you don't need to wean and you could potentially just come off. But if you're taking something regularly, probably best to wean. Now, let's say 3C, you're taking something irregularly, but you're sleeping well. Well, guess what? You're in very good to build confidence, because you're not taking it all the time and you're sleeping good most of the time. So then you can really, really make a case that probably I don't need this. I've probably been sleeping well on my own all this time. And this is, a scenario where you may just not want to wean. You may just want to stop taking it. Similarly, if you are taking something irregularly and you're not sleeping well, you can build confidence for the reasons we just talked about. And it's another one where you may want to not wean, but just stop it. Now, as you may have gleaned from what we talked about here, a lot of how easy or difficult it is to come off medication has to do with confidence, how much you believe in the medication or yourself, right? And here's the thing. If you use anything irregularly or conditionally, that is often very problematic, because it doesn't allow you to see that the medication actually is not the thing that makes you sleep more or less. And what often happens is someone is taking something as needed, and they go like 4 nights sleeping very, very little, and the 5th night say, I gotta sleep tonight. I've slept almost nothing. They take the pill, they sleep more. And then it seems like the medication was the reason they slept. But guess what? That person was more sleepy because they hadn't slept. And they also, over, having gone through cycles of this, have like belief, like this externalized sleep confidence in the medication. So the combination of sleepiness plus the reassurance of taking medication keeps this belief that the person cannot sleep without it entrenched. So that's why this irregular conditional use is very problematic. Versus somebody who takes something every night. Well, if they take something every night and they don't sleep well, it's the medication is a non-factor. That person can see that, oh, it had nothing to do with the medication, And if they take it every night and they sleep well every night, that again, you can build confidence. It's much harder to build confidence when you take something conditionally, So that's always very, very important. And so it becomes like, if you're using something irregularly and, coming off like the cold turkey thing does not seem reasonable, then it may actually be a better option to start taking medication regularly and then wean off, So you can, if you're taking something irregularly and you say it's I can't just stop it, I want to wean off, then a good option would be to either take it at the whatever dosage regularly, or like start like I'm going to start at half dosage, but take it every night, same time every night, and then I can start kind of like weaning off. Now, how do I do that? How do you wean off something? And this is where a lot of people ask about like, what's the best way to wean off, and how should I wean off of this? How should I do this, etc. And my belief is that it's not about milligrams or days or weeks or find the perfect weaning schedule like that, because that implies control, and it's the whole desire for control that creates trouble sleeping. And whenever we imply by any means that we can control things, things get very sketchy. I think it's much better, in my humble opinion, to rely on how do you feel about this? Like, is it reasonable for you? Do you feel, that it's reasonable to wean off in 4 weeks? Or would you like to do it for 4 months? There's a whole wide variety of how to do things. I think what's most important is like do you feel that this is gonna be okay for you? When you think about it, does it feel like, yeah, I think I can do this, or like, no way I can do that? If you feel like, no way I can do that, well, then it's too aggressive. Then, do it more gently, right? So I think that is the most important, because you have to create a plan that you feel like, yes, I think I can do this. Otherwise, it becomes very, very difficult. Okay. So all that was really number 3 then. Now we go to number 4, deploy self-kindness. This is a super, 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 super important one. A lot of that conflict we talked about in the beginning comes from a point of kind of a judgment, when you're like, why am I doing this? Why do I take a medication? I shouldn't need a medication. Why am I doing this to my body? Why am I doing this to my sleep confidence, etc.? All that is judgment. It is nobody else is thinking this about you. It is, you're thinking this about yourself. You're not being kind to yourself. And when you do that, you can easily get stuck. You think that you are the problem, like, you're blaming yourself, etc. Then it becomes harder to move forward. So always deploy self-kindness. Think about every other person in the world that has taken sleep medications. Do you think they are, no good? Do you question why they do it? Do you think, do you judge them? No, you don't. You're kind to them. Be that person to yourself. Deploy self-kindness. That will help you immensely, because when there's less of a conflict, things get much, much easier. And number 5, get the mindset right. This is a huge one, maybe the most important one. I've heard over and over and over again. I've heard so many times how somebody says, I tried to stop this medication and it didn't work. Okay. And, again, there's no judgment here. I completely understand why somebody would do that. It's like, let me just see if I can sleep without this. And if I can, well, then it'll be pretty easy to come off, right? Well, guess what happens? You've taken this medication for a while, and now you're going to see if you can't. So you don't take it. And that very night, of course, because you didn't take it, you're wondering if you are going to sleep or not, right? And that wondering, that you go to bed and like, oh, okay, let's see if I can do this. If I can, that'll be great. If I can't, I don't know. It's been half an hour. Okay, now it's been an hour. Oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours. What's going on? Am I going to sleep at all? Maybe I should take half of it. Maybe I'm done this early. Maybe I should take it tomorrow. But what if I can? Then you don't sleep. And here you see, it's not because you didn't take the medication that you don't sleep. It's how you're thinking about not taking it that is the problem. It's the trial nature. It's the experiment nature. It's the self-monitoring that comes with that creates so much preoccupation and worry and stress and anxiety and insomnia. That is why coming off of medication cannot be a trial. It has to be a decision. It's kind of like stop. You can't be like, I'm going to try to stop smoking and see what happens. If somebody tells me, I've decided to try to stop smoking, you immediately can tell like that person is not going to stop smoking, because they haven't made their mind up. It's the same thing here. If you leave the door open, if you're thinking, if somebody just kind of gives themselves this mental little possibility of going back on medication, in my experience, that leads to you going back. Because after 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days, you have this little voice in your mind that says, maybe you should go back. Maybe you should go back. And that creates so much tension and pressure that it keeps you awake for days on end. And then you go back and take that medication again. And then you sleep. And then it's like, yep, that was it. It proved it. I can't sleep without it. So it has to be a decision. It has to be like never looking back. That is the way. Now, number 6. 6 is a pretty easy one. It's just go ahead with your plan. Go ahead with your plan. And number 7, if you still, even if you did your best, you got the mindset right, you created a plan, it felt great, but that one time you did take the medication, after a week or after 2 weeks or after whatever it was, deploy self-kindness again. Again, think about that person who stops smoking. They've been doing fantastic for 3 weeks. And they're so anxious, they smoke another cigarette. Well, then there's this forking moment, right? That person can go, that's it. I totally failed. I smoked a cigarette. Now I'm back to smoking. I'm a smoker again. I'm never going to stop smoking. Or they can be, yeah, I smoked 1 cigarette. And that doesn't mean anything. That just means I smoked 1 cigarette and I'm on my way to not smoking ever again. Same thing with medication. I see so often people go, dang it, they're so hard on themselves. Dang it, I didn't want to take the sleep medication, but I was so stressed and I took it. And now I've undone all this work I've done. No, you haven't. You just took that medication one time because you felt you needed to sleep. You were, it was an act of self-care. And now deploy that self-kindness. So you can see that it was just this one time, I took it and that's fine. And I'm on my path towards not taking it ever again. Deploy self-kindness. I can't stress enough how important that is. Now, here's the thing. Number 8, the last step is the hardest. And why I say this is that I often find that people can do well halving their dosage. They go from like 10 milligrams to 5 milligrams. They have some rough nights, but then they're okay. They go from 5 to 2.5. Okay, they're doing good. But that last step from 0.0.025 to 0, psychologically, it's very difficult because you don't have that, that thing. You put something in your mouth, you swallow it, and you feel like, okay, this is going to make me sleep, right? So I think the important thing is, as you've gotten to that point where you're going from something to nothing, remember that you have gone, if there's nothing fundamentally physiologically different from halving the dose in the past. Like the other steps may have actually been much, much bigger than this one. So remember that it's how you think about something is what matters, not what actually happened at that time. So, but just know that the last step is often the hardest. It is that. And remember gas and brake again. That's always helps. And number 9, sleep all by yourself forever. You did it. When you hear this, it sounds kind of like daunting, like can never get there, but you can. So many people have done it before. And, I really hope these steps will be super helpful to you. Now, if you feel like this was helpful, if you want to sleep well for the rest of your life without taking medications, even if you think that is impossible, then, learn here. And if you need a little bit extra support, then please please know that I am there for you, as well as Coach Michael. We have our all new self-coaching master program, which I think is going to be super helpful. And guess what? That's not it. If you are a person who prefers learning by reading and one-on-one text-based support, then download BedTyme from the App Store. It is that easy. You can have access to myself tomorrow, or maybe even today, and we can go from there. That said, again, I hope this was super helpful to you, and I look forward to having you back real soon. Until then, take it easy.